Time, The Sadness of a Hollywood Princess. A shameful end to a glittering career. Sibling rivalry in Tinseltown. And the temptress with a temper. The oldest of the four acting Baldwin brothers, Alec was the first to become a professional actor, and to this day remains the most successful and well-known. Alec's career began on television soaps, but minor roles in late 80s movies like Working Girl and Beetlejuice soon saw him raising his profile internationally. In recent years, he has become known for his strong character roles in everything from the film The Cooler to TV shows like Will and Grace and 30 Rock. He has also, unfortunately, become well known for his personal strife. In 2002, an acrimonious divorce from actress Kim Basinger, after 8 years of marriage, led to bitter fighting in the courts, especially over custody arrangements for their daughter, Ireland. This all turned particularly ugly in early 2007, when a tape was released of Alec leaving Ireland an extremely angry voicemail for failing to answer a pre-arranged phone call. His use of the expression thoughtless little pig in regards to his 11-year-old daughter was especially contentious.
Well, while I heard Mr. Baldwin's voice message and was saddened by what he had to say, I also heard the extreme pain that he's gone through as a father who's being abandoned by his daughter and being abused by the system.
But this isn't the only time Alec's mouth has got him into trouble. Famously opinionated and politically liberal, he has landed in hot water several times for refusing to pull his punches vocally. There was the time Alec called Vice President Dick Cheney a terrorist, before retracting that statement in favor of calling him a lying, thieving oil whore and a murderer of the US Constitution. And one of his more notorious outbursts came shortly before the impeachment of President Bill Clinton in 1998. Appearing on the Late Night with Conan O'Brien chat show, Alec gave full vent to his feelings about Henry Hyde, the judge presiding over Clinton's case, saying that in another country, Hyde would be stoned to death and his family killed. Alec claimed the whole incident was a misconceived parody and later apologized to the judge, while the NBC made a promise never to re-air the show. For someone who died only a few months after his 25th birthday, Tupac Shakur certainly managed to jam a huge amount into his short lifespan. In the early 90s, the rap artist achieved much recognition for his music, as well as his work in cinema, poetry, and social activism. With over 75 million albums sold, he is acknowledged as the highest-selling hip-hop artist to date. And in the decade since his death, Tupac's reputation has only grown in stature. Aside from his professional success, however, his problems with the law were many and varied. In 1991, he filed a massive lawsuit against the Oakland Police Department after they allegedly beat him for jaywalking. A couple of years later, he shot two off-duty policemen who were drunkenly harassing a black motorist. All charges against him were dismissed. More serious was the charge a couple of months later that he had sexually abused a woman in his hotel. He eventually served jail time for that conviction, but was shot 5 times in an apparent attempted robbery just before the verdict was announced. In the following years, he was implicated in many more shootings and acts of violence, before finally succumbing to one bullet too many on the 7th of September 1996, after watching a Mike Tyson boxing match. The identity of his assailant has never been proven. In 1973, glam rocker Gary Glitter was the leader of the gang, his first 11 singles making it into the British top 10. Despite drinking heavily, he managed to make several comebacks during the 80s and 90s, with various guest spots and collaborations, as well as several compilations and remixes of his hits. But in 1997, his reputation was in tatters after a technician discovered child pornography on a computer he'd sent in for repair. In 1999, he served 2 months of a 4-month sentence for possession of child pornography. Upon his release, he was hounded by the British tabloids, and after fleeing to Spain and then Cuba, he tried to lay low in Cambodia. but the government got wind of his whereabouts.
The message from Cambodia is very clear. Cambodia is not a safe haven for people who have committed crimes against children in their country or anywhere in the world. They are not welcome in Cambodia. When I heard of this man who has been convicted, who has even served sentence in Great Britain, who is now here in Cambodia, I was extremely worried, concerned, and I have taken measures already to ensure, to prevent that our children will not be victimized.
The 59-year-old rock star claimed he was a changed man.
I deeply regret doing what I was sent to prison for. I've served my time. I want to put it all behind me. I've lived my life. What are your plans now, Gary?
But the minister wasn't buying it.
But out of moral concern, as a preventive measure, I will move forward to address the issue, take it upward to the Prime Minister, and my suggestion to the Prime Minister would be to ask for his deportation.
Gary, whose real name is Paul Gadd, was ordered to leave the country. 3 years later, he was preparing for yet another comeback as host of a British music show when he was arrested at Ho Chi Minh Airport in Vietnam over allegations that he had had sex with several children. He protested his innocence but was denied bail and ended up being convicted of committing obscene acts with girls aged 10 and 11 and sentenced to 3 years in jail. The American Film Institute ranks Grace Kelly as the 13th greatest film star of all time. That incredible achievement becomes positively staggering when taking into account the fact that she appeared in just 11 films over a career that spanned a mere 5 years. She was born in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania in 1929 to a self-made millionaire and a health and fitness teacher. She paid her way through drama college by modeling, and after gaining experience in live television, she landed her first starring role in 1952's High Noon. She went on to win a Golden Globe for Mogambo the following year. The year after that, she won the leading actress Oscar for the black and white film Country Girl. And by the time she retired from making films at the age of 26, she'd starred in the classic musical High Society and in 3 films with Alfred Hitchcock. One of those films, To Catch a Thief, features a famously spooky scene where Grace speeds recklessly along a spiraling strip of road not far from the spot where she was to meet her death some 30 years later. Her co-star in the film, Cary Grant, became a close friend, and after a lifetime of sharing the screen with Hollywood's greatest leading ladies, he had no trouble in naming Grace as his favorite actress. Grace gave it all up to marry Prince Rainier, ruler of the tiny but outrageously wealthy Principality of Monaco in Europe. It was billed as the marriage of the century and sparked a global media frenzy. But all the flashing cameras and fanfare in the world couldn't silence the speculation about the fledgling princess's colourful past. Tabloid speculation about Grace's affairs dated back to High Noon, when it was claimed she was not only carrying on with her married co-star Gary Cooper, but that she was also sleeping with the film's director, Fred Zimmerman. During the making of Dial M for Murder, she caused a furore by allegedly seducing co-star Ray Milland, who was 24 years her senior and married to the very popular Muriel Milland. When Muriel, a close friend of gossip columnist Hedda Hopper, found out about the affair, she walked out of the marriage, and Grace was branded a homewrecker, despite her claims that Ray had pretended he and Muriel were already separated. Next on Grace's hit list was her country girl and high society co-star Bing Crosby. The two were said to have started an affair while Bing's then-wife Dixie was battling terminal cancer. To complicate matters further, Bing was also allegedly seeing Catherine Grant at the same time, despite the fact that Grace had her heart set on becoming his next wife. During her short film career, she also had to endure rumors she'd had an abortion as a result of a relationship with Russian fashion designer Oleg Cassini. With so much gossip and speculation dogging her in Hollywood, the prospect of a fresh start as a European princess was no doubt a very attractive one. On hearing of her engagement, Alfred Hitchcock was quoted as saying he was very happy that Grace had found herself such a good part. However, despite its billing as the wedding of the century, the courtship between the prince and the film star seems to have fallen well short of a fairy tale romance. In fact, it smacked of a good old-fashioned arranged marriage. Their first meeting was during a photo shoot for French magazine Paris Match. The story goes that she was late, he was later, and that she hardly paid him any attention. Yet 8 months later, the prince was embarking on a trip to America. The press was abuzz with speculation that he was on a mission to find a wife, due to the pressure placed on him to produce an heir in order to prevent Monaco from reverting to France. He visited Grace and her family, and after just 3 days, the prince's proposal of marriage was accepted, and preparations for the regal extravaganza were underway. Grace was given a right royal send-off. Thousands of fans turned out to wave her off from New York Harbor in 1956. Accompanied by her parents, her pet Hungarian Vizsla, and 80 pieces of luggage, not to mention several hundred reporters, she set sail for the French Riviera aboard the ocean liner SS Constitution. After 8 days at sea, she was mobbed by thousands of adoring future subjects, clamoring to welcome her to her new home. Grace's wedding dress was designed by MGM's 2-time Academy Award winner Helen Rose. It took 36 seamstresses working on it for 6 weeks to produce the final stunning result of silk, taffeta, tulle, and lace. The ceremony boasted 600 guests, including Ava Gardner, Cary Grant, Gloria Swanson, and the Aga Khan, and was broadcast on television to an estimated 30 million people. After the celebrations, Rainier and his new princess set off on a 7-week Mediterranean cruise aboard the prince's yacht. Getting straight down to the business of producing an heir to the throne, Grace gave birth to Princess Caroline just 9 months later. A year after that, the birth of Prince Albert was welcomed with a 101-gun salute. Their last child, Princess Stephanie, was born 7 years later. Pictures of the growing family were staple fodder for news bulletins and glossy magazines around the world for the next 20 years, and Princess Grace never faltered in her role as the prince's consort and loving mother of his royal children. However, many of her old Hollywood friends felt the weight of her sacrifice. Prior to marrying the prince, her passion for acting had been so consuming that she insisted on interweaving her filming schedule with regular stints in the theatre. But shortly after her marriage, Prince Rainier banned the screening of her films in Monaco. Although he did reluctantly consent to her starring in Hitchcock's 1962 thriller Marnie, the public outcry was so intense she pulled out of the project. A last-ditch attempt to coax her back to Hollywood came from director Herbert Ross in 1977, who wanted to cast her in The Turning Point, but Rainier allegedly scotched the idea. 5 years later, Princess Grace was driving with 18-year-old Stephanie from their country home when the car left the road and plunged 100 feet down the mountainside. Grace was found unconscious while Stephanie suffered a serious cervical fracture. The media's first suggestions were that Stephanie may have been driving, or that Grace, famous for her bad driving, had simply lost control of the Rover. However, the autopsy revealed that she had in fact suffered a stroke while at the wheel. She died in hospital the next day at the age of 52, with her husband and 3 children at her bedside. The world may not have fallen for the fairy tale at the start of the royal marriage, but after witnessing the couple's unceasing devotion to each other over the course of a quarter century, the story of Grace and her prince had become a Mills and Boon classic. 2 years after her death, Grace's grieving husband inaugurated a public rose garden in her honor.
C'est pour ça que ça devient une grande histoire, une histoire magique.
That is why it became a magic love story. It was really love at first sight. They got married and had 3 children. They succeeded to be happy. And the glory of Grace Kelly splashed on Monaco. Prince Rainier never married again. And 23 years later, at the age of 81, he died of lung, heart and kidney failure. He was buried next to Grace in the Grimaldi family vault in Monaco's St. Nicholas Cathedral. During the 1930s and 40s, 3 siblings known as Laverne, Maxine and Patty were one of the most successful female singing trios of all time. The Andrews sisters had a long string of phenomenally popular hit records, including such standards as Rum and Coca-Cola, Don't Sit Under the Apple Tree and Boogie Woogie Bugle Boy. They sang in close harmony, beginning their careers singing with dance bands and touring American vaudeville theaters. They were the first female vocal group to earn a gold record, which they received for their English translation of By Mir bist du schön, or To Me You Are Beautiful, in 1937. During the Second World War, they were tireless entertainers of the Allied troops, traveling to Africa, Italy, and around the US. And they performed often at California's famous Hollywood Canteen. They had a particularly successful collaboration with Bing Crosby, recording 47 songs with him, of which 23 were chart hits. They also appeared in movies, including Buck Privates with Abbott and Costello, and the immensely popular Road to Rio with Crosby and Bob Hope. But in 1953, it all began to fall apart when Patty left the group to go solo. Unfortunately, she neglected to talk to her older sisters, who only found out about the move by reading the newspaper gossip columns. Unsurprisingly, they were a little upset at this, and a bitter separation ensued. The falling out was exacerbated when Patty sued Laverne for a bigger share of their parents' estate. As a duo, Laverne and Maxine were warmly received on a 10-day tour of Australia. But this new career direction was derailed when Maxine took an overdose of sleeping pills in 1954. Laverne, the eldest of the 3, told the press it was an accident. After another couple of years, the sisters buried the hatchet and began to record together again, only this time with Patty as a featured soloist. But times were changing musically, and their style didn't sit well with the rock and roll that was beginning to take hold. In 1967, Laverne died from cancer. Having been the founder of the group and often the peacemaker in family disputes, Laverne was the glue that held the act together, and without her, Maxine left to concentrate on teaching, while Patty continued her solo career. In the history of American big band music, there were no more famous brothers than Tommy and Jimmy Dorsey. The boys were originally taught to play by their coal mining, cornet-playing father in Shenandoah, Pennsylvania. Jimmy was the eldest by a year. Although they both played several instruments and gained fame as band leaders, Tommy specialized on the trombone, while Jimmy preferred alto saxophone and clarinet. Jimmy's skill was such that in 1938 he was included in Ripley's Believe It or Not for playing the flight of the bumblebee in 2 breaths. He later bettered that feat on the TV show Swing Time, when he knocked off the entire tune in just 1 breath. The brothers played with several of the early big bands in the 1920s before joining forces to form the Dorsey Brothers Orchestra in 1927. But despite the band having a big hit with Every Little Movement in 1935, the temperamental Tommy decided to walk out on his brother.
Or not play him at all. All right, we won't play him at all.
Their bickering had escalated until a disagreement over the tempo of one of their songs pushed him over the edge and out of the door. He went on to take over the disintegrating Joe Hames Band, transforming it into a highly successful group and achieving a staggering 137 Billboard chart hits, one of which became Tommy's theme tune, I'm Getting Sentimental Over You. The roll call of great swing and jazz names that collaborated with Tommy over the next couple of decades was truly impressive, and included Nelson Riddle and Frank Sinatra, who claimed he learned his breath control from watching Tommy's trombone technique. Jimmy too picked up the pieces after the split and forged ahead with his own band, but happily reconciled with his brother in 1953 when they once again combined their talents to form the Fabulous Dorseys. One of their claims to fame in this period was in 1956, when they hosted a TV show on which Elvis Presley made his first television appearance, singing Heartbreak Hotel. Sadly, Tommy died the same year, choking in his sleep after a heavy meal and a dose of sleeping pills. It was exactly 1 week after his 51st birthday. Jimmy took over the band, but only outlived his brother by 7 months, succumbing to throat cancer in June 1957. At the age of 18, London-born supermodel Naomi Campbell was the first black woman to appear on the cover of French Vogue. She went on to become one of the fashion world's last great supermodels. However, her stellar career has been dogged by dark tales of backstage temper tantrums. Rumors about her difficult behavior were given credibility in the year 2000, when Naomi pleaded guilty to the charge of assaulting her former assistant Georgina Galanis with a telephone in a Toronto hotel room. Galanis also claimed the supermodel threatened to throw her out of a moving car. She was cleared after promising to attend anger management classes, but stories of an in-house feud with fellow supermodel Tyra Banks were still making it into the tabloids. The story was that Naomi felt there was only room at the top for one black model. Over the next few years, her employees were queuing up to sue her for assault and battery. After news broke of her fight with a maid in 2004, another assistant claimed the model had beaten her around the head with a personal organizer and abused her on 3 continents. No sooner had they settled that matter than Naomi was charged for second-degree assault against her housekeeper, Anna Scolovino, who needed stitches in her head after being belted with a jewel-encrusted mobile phone. Despite the gravity of the charges, Naomi didn't do herself any PR favors by not bothering to show up in court.
Naomi is taking it seriously, but I don't think that's any big whoop, because no one who's gone through the system, who's been arrested and fingerprinted and photographed and brought in front of a judge and bail was set, no one under those circumstances takes these things cavalierly. It's a very, very serious situation.
But even as she was waiting for her next court appearance, Naomi was arrested in London on suspicion of assault. And in November 2006, yet another former housekeeper began legal proceedings against her. In January 2007, Naomi was found guilty of reckless assault against Anna Scolovino and sentenced to 5 days community service. Naomi allegedly blamed her temper on lingering resentment toward her father for abandoning her as a child. And in March, she began mopping floors at New York's sanitation department.